imagine you are in a room with a red button before you. Imagine that pressing the red button detonates a bomb in the next room. Imagine also that the red button is the only means for detonating the bomb. Obviously, you might be ill-advised to press the button. After all, cause is followed by effect. First you press the button, and so an electrical signal passes along the wire to the bomb, and then the bomb goes off. But what if the wires connecting the red button and the bomb run counter to cause and effect? What if any electrical signal you send along those wires by pressing the red button travels backwards in time by 1 hour? What if effect comes a full hour before cause? The bomb is detonated 1 hour before you press the red button. But if that is the case, then the red button would have been destroyed by the bomb exploding 1 hour before the button was pressed. And that red button is the only means of detonating the bomb. Surely that is impossible. Hello, and welcome to the We Listen by Night podcast. And in this episode, we are looking at time paradoxes, as they fascinate the writer, producer, and consumer, ugly word I know, of science fiction and fantasy. We imagine being capable of revisiting the past, being witnesses to history. We could look into the face of Helen of Troy, walk the decks of the Titanic, listen to the first performance of Shakespeare's Macbeth, Mozart's violin sonata in D major, and the speeches of Cicero. We could watch the grassy knoll, discover the real identity of the man in the iron mask, and sketch maps of the villages and settlements of Doggerland before the flood. Perhaps we could go forward and become forewarned of the dangers yet to come. Most depictions of time travel in popular science fiction tend towards fantasy. Back to the Future has Marty changing his present by interfering inadvertently with his family's past. Terminator 2 Judgment Day has our heroes change the future by destroying Skynet before it can become the danger it is destined to become, even though in reality that would erase John Connor from existence. Source Code and Deja Vu come closer to reality, but then fumble at their finales. Quantum Leap was constantly putting right what once went wrong, whilst Doctor Who's fixed points in time that cannot be changed did not prevent it from changing the race of Sir Isaac Newton and making the Doctor the motivating force behind the Rosa Parks incident. We can forgive some of these depictions, of course, because of their entertainment value. Back to the Future, for example, is a science fiction comedy adventure, so we can get away with it. But to paraphrase Han Solo, that's not how time travel works. Occasionally, we get an accurate depiction. One made for popular consumption was a short-lived television series called Crime Traveller, produced in the 1990s for the BBC. But most of the time, pun not intended, popular depictions are little better than wish fulfillment and fantasy. But this podcast episode is not about depictions of time travel. It is also not a retelling of urban legends concerning time travel, although I might produce an episode that does, if there is demand for such. Instead, this is somewhat a stream of consciousness about the theoretical side of time paradoxes. Don't expect it to make much sense. Prophecies. Prophecies are a form of time travel, at least in a fictitious form. The oracle or fortune teller speaks, and we believe we have glimpsed the future and can act upon this knowledge. They play on our gullibility, which is why many fortune tellers give us only good news. They know that we will want the good news to be true, and so we will fool ourselves into believing the fortune teller. Occasionally, a prophecy might be uncannily accurate. Yet anyone who has read George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, or what we have of it, will know that prophecies are to be interpreted with care. Our reaction to prophecy tends to swing instinctively towards forewarned is forearmed. If you know X before it happens, then you could interfere. You could change X to Y. But in truth, a real prophecy is more likely to take itself into account. The future that the prophecy predicts includes the prophecy itself and our reaction to it. Your reaction is a part of the predicted future. For example, imagine in a week's time you are to catch a flight to Mauritius. You hear a prophecy that predicts you will die in a plane crash next week. To avoid this fate, you choose to cancel your flight. Driving to the supermarket a week later, you are killed when an aeroplane falls from the sky and crashes onto your car. The prophecy is proved correct. It has been fulfilled. The crashed aeroplane is not the aeroplane you were due to be aboard, but it is an aeroplane and it did kill you. You tried to avoid your fate, and yet, had you not learnt of the prophecy and acted to avoid your supposed fate, you would have survived. The prophecy and your reaction to it has killed you. The prophecy has fulfilled itself. But prophecy is a form of time travel. Instead of physical travel, we aim to gaze at the future as if through a telescope. Yet, in order for there to be viable prophecies, there must be a future independent of the present. The same is true of time travel. You cannot travel if there is nowhere to go. Destination, no destination. One objection to time travel is that there is no destinations. Travel implies a starting point and an end point, a destination. In order to travel back to, say, 1984, the year 1984 would have to exist independently of 2025, or whichever year is your current year. If you choose to travel to London, assuming you would want to, then London would have to exist as an independent location from where you happen to be, say Edinburgh. But if only Edinburgh exists, then you cannot travel to London, for London would not exist. The same is true of travelling back to 1984. If only the present time exists, then 1984 does not exist, and so you cannot travel there. Neither can you predict what will happen. You can guess, you can project, you can examine trends and take them to their logical conclusion based on historical precedents. But you cannot know the future before it becomes the present, for that future is fiction until it arrives. This idea is the Heraclitan model of a world in flux, in which the past and future do not exist, only the present. In opposition is the Parmenidean conception of a world in which reality and truth are stable and eternal, which Phil Dow, in his article The Case for Time Travel, written in the year 2000, takes to mean the past, present and future exist. This is rather like the block universe theory of time, in which past, present and future all coexist in the same space. In this case, an observer outside the universe might be able to witness the whole universe, both physically and temporally, in 5 minutes, or at different moments viewed at their leisure, like watching a YouTube video. In this sense, we might call the universe a cosmic and temporal Netflix for the gods. According to the Parmenidean model, 1984 would exist as a possible destination independent of the present. A Parmenidean model or block universe might allow for ghosts and time slips, assuming these are real. Jane Seymour is said to still walk the corridors of Hampton Court, where she died. The fighting at the Battle of Gettysburg has been heard up to the present day. A man wearing a bowler hat has been reported searching for his briefcase at Heathrow Airport, in spite of having been killed in a plane crash in 1948. The idea of at least some ghosts being residual imprints on particular locations is not a new one. Sad Emily gazes out of her window at Dulson Hall, still waiting. Is she merely a recording? Are residual ghosts half-hearted time slips? If the block universe model is correct, and past, present and future coexist in the same space, then is there any reason the barriers between past, present and future might not occasionally weaken? Time paradoxes. Does the Parmenidean model allow time travelers to change history? We can argue that it does not. as William Gray wrote, it is the only conception of the world in time that can accommodate time travel. But if reality and truth are stable and eternal, then the past cannot be changed. Consider the time-traveling billiard ball paradox. You hit a billiard ball across a billiard table. The ball passes through one end of a time tunnel or wormhole. By doing so, the ball travels down the time tunnel and re-emerges at the other end of the tunnel a few seconds before it entered the tunnel. It runs across the table and knocks its younger self off course, preventing its younger self from passing into the tunnel. We have a paradox. The ball is prevented from going backwards in time and so does not knock itself off course, but that means it cannot pass down the time tunnel and re-emerge to prevent itself from passing through the time tunnel. How can we solve this paradox? Well, we forget about changing history. Instead, history is reinforced by the time-travelling ball. When the time-travelling billiard ball re-emerges from the time tunnel, it knocks its earlier self not away from the time tunnel entrance, but into the time tunnel entrance. If the ball had not passed backwards in time, then the ball would have missed the entrance to the time tunnel. The time-travelling billiard ball is the cause of its own time-travelling adventure. In a curious way, the ball has both changed history and reinforced the very same history. The same might be true of actual time travellers and the paradoxes time travel creates. It might be the case that history, as we know it, has already been changed by time travellers. How would we know? From our perspective, the events of history have already happened. Instead of changing history, any real time traveller might be the cause of that history. The difference, as stated by Phil Dow in his The Case for Time Travel, is thus. If a man lived through the year 1950, then one cannot go back to that year and kill that man, since this would entail a contradiction. The man survives 1950 and doesn't survive 1950. To change the past from what it actually was to something else is an incoherent notion. But this does not preclude the time traveller from causing things. If it is true that a man died in 1950, then a time traveller can travel back and kill that man that year. This is not changing the past. There is no first 1950 in which the man does not die. Imagine making a cup of tea after you have drunk it. An interesting example is given by William Gray in Troubles with Time Travel, in Philosophy, Volume 74, 1999, page 70. It is the red button paradox I outlined earlier. The red button connected to a bomb. The button is pressed, but the signal travels backwards in time by 1 hour and triggers the explosion. But this explosion would destroy the whole building, including the red button and whoever pressed it. This is reverse causation. The effect comes before the cause, but there can be no effect without that cause. The red button must be pressed in order for the explosion to happen. But if the explosion has happened, then the red button has been destroyed before it can be pressed, and so the explosion could not have happened. But if it did not happen, then the red button is intact and it can be pressed. And around we go. If pressing the button works, then the button cannot exist, as the explosive device would have destroyed it an hour earlier. But the explosive device would not have gone off unless the button works. This is similar to the grandfather paradox, as described by David Lewis in an article called The Paradoxes of Time Travel, published in American Philosophical Quarterly in April 1976. The only way out of this paradox is to adopt the Heraclitan model of time. There is no past into which the electrical signal from the red button can go. The bomb, therefore, does not go off 1 hour before the red button is pressed. After all, it cannot detonate without the button being pressed. Cause and effect is restored, and time travel is rendered impossible. But we have a solution to the billiard ball paradox. Can we adopt it for the red button paradox? Well, no, not really. The billiard ball paradox is about contradictory course changes, whilst the red button is about destruction. Perhaps the bomb would go off, but the explosion would be funneled somehow into the future, destroying the red button after it has been pressed. All I can say is that I have no answer. Time loops. After all that, let's have a little fun. Causal loops are fun to play with. Anyone who has read the short story All You Zombies by Robert Heinlein will know just how far you can take them. Let's try a thought experiment. Consider the disintegrating pocket watch question. You have a pocket watch inherited from your father. You gain access to a time machine and go back in time. You meet your grandfather and give him your pocket watch, unaware that your father inherited the very same pocket watch from his father. The watch is used by your grandfather for decades. He dies, and the watch is inherited by his son, your father. In his turn, your father leaves this mortal coil, and you inherit the watch. The pocket watch exists in a time loop. It has no beginning, for your grandfather received it from you, and you received it from your grandfather via your father. Nowhere during its existence has the pocket watch been brought into existence. It has no true beginning, no moment of manufacture. Nowhere has there been a time in which it was first made. Instead, it exists as a looping object, but whilst it might not have a beginning, it certainly has an end. Every time it loops, it ages several decades. It is handled by your grandfather, your father, and you. But as the watch experiences a near endless time loop, you experience the watch only once. The loop ends with the failure of the pocket watch, for who would then give a broken pocket watch to their offspring? If the grandfather, father, and you persevered in spite of the broken pocket watch, then eventually the pocket watch would disintegrate, break into pieces, rust into metallic dust, and then it would be gone. But as it existed inside a causal loop, the loop would cease and the pocket watch would cease to exist. Subsequently, you, your father, and your grandfather would have no memory of the pocket watch. Concluding thoughts. In this thought experiment, the pocket watch cannot exist, as it has no beginning. Can we apply some aspect of it to the red button paradox? After all, the button cannot exist before it is pressed if the explosion has already destroyed it. At the very most, it is in pieces and inoperable. What if the red button was not inside the building before and during the explosion, but was brought in amongst the ruins afterwards? But then, how would you connect the electrical wires to the bomb if the bomb has already destroyed itself? Must we apply the parallel worlds theory to the red button paradox in order to solve it? Would that be sidestepping the issue? Is there an answer to the red button paradox? Or is it merely a flight of human fantasy? I did tell you this episode would be somewhat a stream of consciousness, didn't I?